Well, hello and welcome to Working Lunch, the Slow Chambers weekly series where we take some time to talk with our community leaders and help you connect to some of the things happening in our region. I'm Jim D'Antona, President and CEO of the Slow Chamber, and today you'll get to be a part of my conversation with Rick Stollmeyer, founder and executive chairman of Mindbody. During his 2 decades at the helm, Mindbody grew to be the largest private employer in the region, making the Inc. 5000 list of the fastest growing private companies for 7 years in a row. He also led the company's $100 million IPO in 2015, and in 2019, its acquisition by Vista Equity Partners for $1.9 billion. Throughout his tenure, Rick has played a key role in the development of what we now know as the modern wellness industry. From the introduction of the first integrated online booking and business management systems in the early 2000s, to the release of the first fully cloud-based business management solution in 2005, and the groundbreaking Mindbody consumer app that is used by millions of people to connect with wellness services providers worldwide. Rick has published his book, Building a Wellness Business That Lasts, in October, and it seems like the timing couldn't have come at a better time. I'm looking forward to talking to him about the importance of small business, characteristics of successful entrepreneurs, and his experience leveraging opportunities in times of crisis. Rick, thank you so much for being here today.
Jim, it's great to be here, and thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure, and as we always start our show here, love to know where you're zooming in from today.
I'm zooming in from our home here, right in beautiful San Luis Obispo.
Beautiful day in the Central Coast, huh?
Yes, it is. Got to go out and hike Cerro San Luis this morning, get a little vitamin D, and just it's so great to be up and on that hill and remind ourselves how blessed we are to live in this beautiful region.
It's so true, so true. So I know we'll be spending most of our conversation talking about the present and future, but I'm fascinated by your backstory and would love if you could tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how your family influenced your trajectory.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Southern California and, born into a family of small business owners. This ended up becoming a central reason for the creation of Mindbody. Mindbody is a software technology platform for primarily small business owners in the fitness, salon, spa, integrative health industries. And so, I was born in a town called Glendora, down in the San Gabriel Valley of Los Angeles County, and youngest of 5 boys, raised in my dad's business. I took kind of a left turn and went to the U.S. Naval Academy, became a submarine officer, and served in the Navy for a total of 10 years. Left that in the mid-90s and really was kind of adrift for a while, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I had a series of different jobs that I didn't really enjoy very much, although one of those had a very important purpose. It brought me to the Central Coast, and I worked in space launch at Vandenberg Air Force Base. Learned a lot there and fell in love with the Central Coast, wanted to stay here even though there weren't many jobs, and that was part of the impetus to start something new in my garage with my co-founder.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's some obviously well-trodden lore about companies that are started in people's garages, and it sounds kind of like a stereotype, but as you said, you literally did start Mindbody in a garage.
Well, garages have a number of really important characteristics. Number one, the rent is very cheap, approximately zero. You have to get rid of some crud and put some desks in and park your car outside. And secondly, the commute is short.
The commute's got to be one of the key parts, but yeah, rent is a perfect price at that level.
Yeah. Well, and we've all rediscovered working from home, haven't we? And it's more valid than ever. So yeah, it's part of the lore, because when you're starting a business like this, it's very difficult to get any financial backing in the early stages.
Well, maybe talk a little bit about those early days and how you took advantage of opportunities there in a crisis, because it seems like your business was launching in some difficult times there.
Yeah, the Mindbody story is really one of crises. We in the late 90s, one of my best friends from high school started writing software. It was custom software for fitness studios. And he educated me on this emerging boutique fitness market. It was yoga, Pilates, and spinning primarily. And the epicenter of that was Los Angeles and San Francisco. And so he was the one that really opened my eyes. And when he told me about it, my first question was, yoga is a business, really? And what's pilots? And why would anybody ride stationary bicycles indoors and pay money for that? Because I like to bike outside. And what he showed me was remarkable. It was what really we came to understand later as this new wave of highly impactful activities where it's about human contact, the contact with the teacher or trainer or therapist, and about a sense of camaraderie with the people that gather together in these little studios. The studio models were a much smaller footprint, less expensive, a lot less capex than building a big box, multi-story health club, and so they could grow much more quickly. And they had relatively complex business models. They had to have a CRM that managed their customer relationships. They needed a point of sale system to ring up sales, because most of these businesses also sell products. They needed a booking system for managing who was going to which appointments and which classes. They needed a staff management system because they generally pay their staff according to which classes or sessions they lead and how many people show up for those things. And they needed some kind of account management system because people would buy a 10 class pass or a monthly membership, and those had to be applied to later visits and sessions. So just what I just described there is actually a pretty complex database problem. And that was the inception of our software in the late 90s. So Blake educating on this, I'm still working at Vandenberg, and in the summer of 2000, decided to take the leap. And I did it because I really fell in love with these grassroots entrepreneurs, these people that leave the relative safety of a job, take enormous personal financial risk, sign a multi-year lease, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars outfitting a space to hang up a shingle that says Mary's Yoga Studio or this particular fitness gym. And I find those people inspiring. It really connected me to my own family, to my grandfather, to my own dad, to three of my four brothers who are all small business owners. And on top of everything else, they're doing it for a really good reason. They're doing it to help people lead healthier, happier lives. And I thought, well, I don't know if I'm ever going to make any money at this, but helping these people be more successful at least is a worthy cause.
Well, and it certainly seemed to take hold. And you're right, you were on the front end of that idea of the wellness business, of what Pilates was. That was a great one. And yoga studios. And this is a business model. But maybe help me understand a little bit about, what is a wellness business? Is it a gym? Is it a mental health practitioner? Is it spiritual?
Sure. Well, and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yes, wellness is all of those things. In fact, the best way to think about it is the 7 dimensions of wellness. And you can Google that and look at it. And there's some really cool graphics that show you what that is. The cornerstone of wellness is, of course, a body that works. And that, of course, is physical fitness. And that's, and how do we move our bodies more, and how do we eat better? And that's really the essence of what the fitness dimension of the wellness industry is. And of course, that's the largest dimension of it right now, because that's where most of us have a lot of challenge in our modern lives. Modern living is about fast food, and sometimes we develop bad eating habits, and also a lot less movement. Our bodies evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to do a lot of movement. And so, as so many of humanity in the last 100 years have emerged out of poverty, this has become a paramount concern. So, but it doesn't just end there. It's not just physical fitness, because if you're working out 5 days a week and you have 2% body fat, and you could bench 200 pounds, or you could do an incredibly complicated yoga asana, but you're not talking to your spouse, and your kids don't know you, and you don't have any friends, you're not well. There's something else going on. And so it's also about emotional well-being. How do we manage this crazy, stressful world that we live in? It's about mental wellness, mental health. Mental health, I think, is probably the number one crisis of the 2020s, certainly amplified by COVID. It's about a sense of social connection, which we call social well-being. And that is, do you actually have real and meaningful relationships with others in your life, those in your community, with family and with friends? It's about spiritual well-being. What is each individual's sense of purpose? What is our life really about? How do we connect with that? It's about occupational well-being, and that is, do you have a job that doesn't just put food on the table, but a career that is meaningful to you and provides purpose and meaning in your life? Well, all of that is addressed in the wellness industry. That's actually what wellness practitioners do, is they help people along all seven of those dimensions.
Well, and I imagine, obviously, as much as you were talking about, right, our current lifestyle makes it difficult to go investigate each of those pieces. I can
Mhm.
imagine that having a fabulous app that can help you schedule that time and find those places would be a great tool,
Mhm.
both for those businesses who are trying to help, and that person who's trying to, engage some of those pieces.
Well, yeah, and you're speaking about the consumer side of our business, the Mindbody app. That was the second stage. The first stage of our business was, first of all, just to help these business owners stabilize their operations. To have a scalable and sustainable business, they needed to be able to manage the complexities of their scheduling, their staff management, ringing up sales, selling memberships and multi-session passes. And that stuff's not trivial. And a lot of these businesses prior to us, we're doing it on just on pen and paper, a recipe box full of 3x5 cards. And so Jim Dantona has joined. So we pull out a new 3x5 card. We write Jim Dantona, and you just bought a 10 session pass. So we'd hash out 10 boxes, and then we'd file it alphabetically. And when you came in, somebody would pull that out and put the date on it. February 24th. You went to the 3 p.m. class with Susie, and then some poor person had the job every 2 weeks to pull all the cards out and spread them out on the table and add up how many sessions that Susie delivered so we could accurately pay Susie. That was the inception of our business. And solving that business problem was the reason that Mindbody started. But we always had the vision that we could also leverage this technology to connect more people. And that was our purpose. Our purpose in Mindbody is to help people lead healthier, happier lives by connecting the world to wellness. So we always saw ourselves as a connective platform. In industry parlance, they say a B to B to C. We're a business to business platform with also a consumer element, business to consumer. And that was really the fruition of the dream that started in my garage. It took us about 10 years to get to the point where we actually had a meaningful consumer brand.
Well, and it's amazing, and obviously that led to some bigger things for Mindbody, and
Mhm.
obviously, kind of getting to, just this last August, here you were running day-to-day operations as CEO, and August, with the work with Vista, you're now executive chair. What did that mean for Mindbody, and what does it mean for you personally in your kind of your daily life?
Well, I really decided about 5 years ago when I turned 50 that I wasn't going to be the CEO of Mindbody, until the bitter end, and I see a number of entrepreneurs and executives get caught up in this. You get stuck. You love your work, and your work maybe even starts to define you. And for me, I love Mindbody. I feel incredibly fortunate to have basically stumbled into my life's work, and I also knew that I didn't want this to be the only work that I did. I wanted to create more space in my life. So about 5 years ago, I'm a part of a CEO group called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. And I was with a group of CEOs, and we did an exercise of imagining our lives 5 years and 10 years forward. And my 5 year plan, which I called my Vision 2020, had no idea what was going to happen in 2020. uh, was that I had built a team strong enough that I could hand the baton to another CEO. Hopefully, hang around as a board director and a mentor and a sounding board for that new CEO. But then open up a lot more space in my life, and that's really the intention. And so, when we sold the company to Vista, after the deal closed, the very first conversation, I sat down with the principals there, and they asked me, Rick, what do you want? And I said, well, listen, I can commit to you guys about 3 years, but by the end of that third year, and this would have lined up to 2021, I want to have handed off the CEO title. And if you guys want, I'm happy to stick around as a board director. And that's exactly what manifested. of course, had no idea what was going to happen in 2020. And so when when COVID-19 hit on Friday the 13th of March 2020, and it was devastating to our customers, to the small business owners, as everybody knows. In fact, 1 in 4 of the businesses we were serving a year ago are now no longer there. About 10% churn is normal. As we all know, Main Street businesses, they're going to have a certain amount of turnover, but to have a 25% annual churn is extraordinary. I'm very bullish, by the way, about the future of the industry, and we should get to that. But when it happened, I guess I allowed myself about a week of self-pity and saying, really, this is my last chapter as CEO, is watching the business get hammered, having to plan a gut-wrenching layoff of roughly a third of our staff. We had to lay off or furlough over 700 people. Hands down, the hardest thing I've ever had to do, because we cared deeply about our team, and we had a remarkable team, but it had to be done to ensure that the business could hunker down through this crisis and be ready to emerge out of it, so that we could serve the customers who managed to get through the crisis. And like I said, allowed me myself a few days of self-pity, and then said, okay, snap out of this, man, and do what you got to do. And we did it, and we've come out of it, I think, a strong organization.
And obviously that kind of leads, right about that same time, you must have been planning this idea about your book, about building a wellness business that lasts. It came out in October, which means you must have been writing it right around this time. It's an interesting time, obviously, for a book launch. Can you tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, I actually started writing the book. I mean, the principles, and by the way, this book is about wellness businesses, but frankly, the principles in it are about 90% applicable to any business, how to build any business that lasts. I mean, and the reason for that title is, what's the definition of success? Well, the definition of success in business kind of really depends on the intentions of the entrepreneur. What did they want? Did they want the business to be a global brand, or you want it to just be a good lifestyle, sustainable business that supports you and your family? I mean, both of those are success. So what is the real metric? A business that lasts. Is the business still going to be here 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now? That's a sign, I think, that the business was conceived in a way that aligns with the entrepreneur's lifestyle decisions, their own definition of success. So I actually started the material for it with things that we accumulated across many, many years, 2 decades really serving this industry. A lot of speeches I gave, a lot of presentations, some of them with the chamber. But I actually started writing the book in earnest in the summer of 2019. And I delivered my final manuscript, to my editor on March 5th of 2020. And this manuscript, which was written to be timeless principles that could be applied a decade from now or 20 years from now, stood the test of time for almost a week. And and then the COVID thunderbolt hit, devastating the industry, changing everything, changing the world. And after a few weeks of that, and of course having to first and foremost focus as the CEO on doing my duty, to replan the business in this hard new environment, I called my editor and said, okay, stop, this manuscript needs to be rewritten. And then after I had some time, really by the end of April, and could start seeing the data, what was happening across the industry, I started rewriting it, and finished the manuscript, the rewrite, in the end of August, so that the book could be published in October. But actually, we didn't even really start promoting the book. Like, we're kind of just now starting to get serious about it, because the industry is just now emerging out of COVID, and everything we see says this industry is going to come roaring back. That actually, this is a whole new wave of wellness that is before us. It's incredibly exciting, and it's a great time for anyone who is aspiring to start a business like this, in an industry that helps millions of people live better lives. It couldn't be a better time than right now.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like there's that that pent up energy that it's about to explode out of there. And we're all starting to recognize the impacts of this last year on our bodies, on our minds, on, someone like myself who's incredibly positive and always feels energetic has been just worn, the battery is worn down. So I can
Yeah.
imagine how important this will be in the long term. So in the book, you talk a little bit about that metaphor of a telephoto lens as something a leader needs to constantly be tinkering with, right? Zooming in and out. Um, how has that practice served, or do you see it as guiding companies through this kind of pandemic?
Sure. One of the key things that I did a lot of thinking about over several years were because I got to firsthand serve tens of thousands of entrepreneurs, many of them successful, some of them not. And through that, started asking the question of what was it that made the successful ones successful. And frankly, by the end of this 2-decade journey, I got to where I could tell pretty quickly whether somebody had what it took, and condensed it down to some key factors. Number one was something we call authentic enthusiasm, and that is, people talk about passion, but passion doesn't necessarily mean towards a positive outcome. People commit crimes of passion. There was a lot of passion on January 6th at the U.S. Capitol. That's not a good thing. That particular passion, enthusiasm, if you get to the Greek root of the word, has to do with being excited and interested in something that has a positive outcome for society and for humanity. And authentic means that you really know what you're doing. You've taken the time to experience the industry. You've gotten licensed or certified in whatever modality excites you. You've actually served clientele. You've actually worked perhaps in one of these businesses, so you understand it. So that's number one. Do you actually know what you're doing? It sounds basic, but that's really important for an entrepreneur. You don't have to know everything, but you got to know the essentials. Number two, that this concept called grit, and I think most people have heard it. If you need a refresher on that, go to YouTube. Angela Lee Duckworth has a great 10-minute presentation about grit. And grit is that ability to get back up again when you've been knocked down, to have a long-term vision for what you're trying to achieve, and to not be knocked off of it through the inevitable setbacks. Because if you are aspiring to start your own business, you are going to suffer setbacks. It is inevitable. It's part of the process. Expect it. So then when it comes, you go, oh yeah, it's supposed to be like this. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Not everybody can start a successful business. So that grit is really important. Next is what we call effective decision making. And so effective decision making says that we are engaging all three parts of our psyche. Number one is our conscious mind, the ability to look at objective data, and the discipline to look at the numbers, to look at market data, to look at what's happening in your business, but also tapping into your heart. Your heart is the house of your desire. What do you want? What does your soul really want? What are you truly interested in? And then next is your gut, which is the metaphor for intuition. And so the intuition is our subconscious. And there's science behind this, that our minds are really like icebergs. And the part that's above the water is which is our conscious mind, is a teeny tiny bit of our brain activity. The vast majority of our wisdom and our brain activity is actually below. It's in the subconscious level. So an effective entrepreneur has to be able to make decisions by tapping into all three of those things. Next is what we call zooming in and zooming out, which is what you're referring to. And that is this, if you think of the metaphor of like an old style camera with a telephoto lens, where you're zooming in to the great detail, and then you're zooming back out again to see the big picture. Effective entrepreneurs, every time, have the ability to do both. Most people are really good at one or the other. They're really good at the details, the classic accountant's mentality, perhaps, that just loves detail. The problem is, if you spend all your time in detail, you're missing what's going on. What's happening with the global economy, what's happening with consumer taste, what's happening in San Luis Obispo, what's going on. So you have to be able to be zooming into your details, making effective decisions, and zooming back out, looking at what's going on in the environment, and you're doing this sequentially back and forth. And so in the book, I talk about, first of all, assessing your own natural tendencies, because we all have greater strength in one or the other. and then how do you strengthen the other? So these are some of the principles of how to be a successful entrepreneur. And I think it is in the capacity of all people to do it, but you have to have a clear-eyed view of where you are right now along that continuum of capability and how to work on yourself in the areas where you may not be quite so strong yet.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can get, as a business owner, so focused on the one piece that you just lose focus of those bigger pieces. That's a great set of practical uses that you outlined right there, and I'm
Thank
sure,
you.
yeah, extremely helpful for business owners, for any business owner, even somebody today who's running maybe a successful business, how they may even be able to grow that. That's incredible.
At the risk of sounding like I'm trying to sell books, and I'm really not. This is about, by the way, all the proceeds of the books are going to charity. This is really about, for me, about paying it forward. I didn't come up with any of this stuff originally. This is mentors who helped teach me, and then also School of Hard Knocks, where I just learned most of my lessons in life the hard way. And I try to put all of it in the book, and it pertains to any kind of business, not just wellness businesses.
Well, and it's one of the things I will say, since you're such a great business leader on the Central Coast here, important for our community, because we've had almost an entrepreneurial business mindset from the start, because that's how
Mhm.
we have to kind of set it up. So
Yeah,
love what you're doing for those who are just popping out of college and now, what am I going to do? To the person who's sitting on the side and goes, I've always wanted to do something. Really amazing. So I was looking down the road, and I'm hearing what you're saying. In the next couple of months and beyond, does it feel like there's room for hope, optimism towards our ability to move past where we are, have been in this pandemic?
absolutely. In my opinion, the pandemic is in its last stages. And I think our public health officials and government leaders are reticent to say that because, we've been burned before by overly positive predictions. But it's a simple matter of how many people in the country have already had COVID. And right now, most estimates are around 1 in 3 have actually already had the disease, and the vast majority of those people probably have immunity. And then the vaccinations have been a huge triumph of science, and it's rolling out at an accelerating rate. And what we can see going forward is that, right now about 15% of the country has had the first vaccine. Maybe 8 or 9% has had both shots. We have the Johnson and Johnson shot coming out, which will be the single shot vaccine. We've got other 2-shot vaccines, and both Pfizer and Moderna are ramping up. So we're going to be vaccinating probably 2 million to 2.5 million people per day. Divide that by 2 if it's a 2-shot vaccine, then you got more than 1 million people a day gaining immunity. We'll just do the math. By the time we get to 4th of July, this thing's over. It really is. Yes, it's possible that a variant could come out that's vaccine resistant. But you know what, folks? I think it's also possible that the sky could fall, and it's possible there could be another pandemic. And I mean, if we live our lives that way, um, that's a recipe for unhappiness. I'll bet anybody lunch and a beer that this thing's over with by 4th of July.
Well,
And so, yeah, and in that environment, let me finish the thought. Uh, Even though there are many people that have been hurt economically, and hopefully Congress and our president and our administration is going to come together and have additional relief for those people and for businesses. But the savings rate in the United States has gone up by trillions of dollars in the last 12 months. People are pent up. Everybody I know can't wait to get out and do things, whether it's travel, whether it's just simply eating downtown, experiencing things again. And I think we are going to have a huge boom. It's like a euphoria. Perhaps that is the roaring 20s of the 21st century starting. So I think, from a business perspective, assuming you're in a business that actually makes sense in post-COVID 2021, there are some really exciting times ahead.
Well, I share that optimism. And I think, again, from the energy you feel out there of folks of what they want to do, I think there really is some good times ahead. And again, I think I share that great optimism you have there. And I think it's a great message to share around for others. What I'd like to do here is just real quick is share for the people watching where you can find Rick's book here, and take a second, and if you're not familiar with a QR code, Just hold your camera up right to that screen and pull that in, and it shoots you directly out into buying the book for the building a wellness business that lasts, but again, applicable to all of us. So um, Rick, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and spending this time. I know you're super busy, but really appreciate you being here.
It's my pleasure, Jim. And to all the members of this community, hang in there, folks. We've had a tough year, but there are great times ahead. And everybody I know, the smart money is betting on a big booming economy. So be ready for that and enjoy it. We all deserve it.
Perfect. Well, that's a great way to end this week. And so we thank all of you for eating lunch with us. We hope to see you next week. If you have questions or you want to add a question in the chat there, more than happy to get those answered for you when we get a moment. We appreciate you all tuning in. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. Stay healthy and safe out there.